I do have 6:30. The meeting will come to order. By state law, the first order of business will be the agenda additions and deletions. I would just note that we are, I believe that public comments or our comments, I'm going to ask a motion be put in for Kathy to sign the letter of inclusion that's going to be framed in hand. Other than that, I don't believe we have any other additions. Minutes and pay orders. Minutes for July 5th, 2022. If I get a motion and a second to discuss.
Make the motion.
Second.
Anything needs to be corrected on the minutes, typos.
Carolyn was here at that meeting, wasn't she?
Yeah, that's what I sent an updated one.
Oh.
I don't even know how that got in there, because the one I posted on my website
You got a
Yeah.
tight
was,
grade?
the one on the website's correct.
Okay.
And I updated the one I sent everybody. I added the line about Wallingford Day not being discussed at the last.
Hearing none, I am going to move the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pay orders currently showing $10,056.60. It's for July 19th. Do I have a motion and a second to examine them?
Make a motion.
Second.
Do we have anything that's questioned on the pay order?
I was just wondering, did the field trip come out of this year's budget or next year's budget, Julie?
This is fiscal year 23.
Okay.
Hearing no others, I'll move the question. All in favor of the $10,056.60, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Julie, the preliminary year in?
So the Excel spreadsheet that I gave you right now for any final pay orders, we have a surplus of $86,963. And I don't know if you want me to go down, but that's, if you look under income, that's attributable to transfer station fees. We're at $22,000 compared to budget. 1% interest on past due taxes was up over $12,000. Delinquent property taxes over $69,000. Under grants awarded, if you deduct the grant expenses, we had a surplus of $22,000, which is a couple grants. The expenses were, well, they come out of, when Sandy estimates them, it's highway, your hourly wage and equipment use, but we don't really take it out of anything, so there was a surplus of $22,000 there. Land use reimbursement, we were over $4,400, and then there was no budget for Elfin Lake, the gate or concession, so those were added. And then if you go under expenses, everything is pretty much in line or under budget. One of the big ones is unemployment insurance, I should say, 5025. That was under 15,000 than what was projected. Transfer station operating is under 20,000, and the highway is under 20,000, but we need to account for that. What I'm proposing is on the final pay order for June 30th are these 3 items. So for every document we record, we get $15. and $4 of that is earmarked for the Records Restoration Fund. So that has to be carried over every year. So that's $808 on the pay order. The Wallingford Day budget, I don't know how you want to handle that, but we took in $13,340 and we expensed $12,254 for a net of $1,085. And then the last one is the, to transfer the highway budget, what's remaining of it, almost $11,000. We'll just carry that over like we did last year. Using about $10,000 for what we were over on highway salaries for road crew and overtime that were not budgeted because of our new hire, which is all in this memo.
If we look at the pay order for June 30th, the total on that is $12,751.54. Am I right with that?
So right now, the general fund balance is $86,963. If you approve those 3 pay orders, it'll bring the year-end surplus to $74,202. Which you can vote on at, when we set the tax rate, you can use that to reduce the amount of taxes that have to be raised, and a estimate of what the rate would be. Last year it was 0.3936, and if you use this money towards reducing what we have to raise in taxes, it'll be 0.3940, so really won't be a change. And the school tax for residential is going down 10 cents. And the non-residential is going down. Anybody got that?
It's,
150.
was 155, and it's
165, it was 162, so that's going down
Right.
7 cents, so.
So we need a motion, what, just to make that 74,000 on the, a motion on the 74,000 to add it to this year's budget, or I'm not really sure.
So all I need you to do right now is to approve those, the pay order for June 30th, and then when I come to the next meeting, I'll have the final balance of what the carry forward's gonna be, and I'll show you what the tax rate will be based on the grand list, and you'll set the town tax at that time.
Okay, do we have a
Right now,
motion?
this is just for the year end, how to close it out.
Okay. Do we have a motion for that? On what Julie just said?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept those terms and moving it over into the...
Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. You're good then, Sam? Okay. Do we still need to approve the 10,000 one too? That's the pay orders going forward for tomorrow.
We just,
Or is that included in what we just did?
The pay order, you just approved the pay order.
Okay.
So that-
Anything else on that, Julie? Phil?
How's everybody tonight? I went down, Lori got a piece of marble for putting under the bench or seat, whatever it is. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. It's a 6-inch thick piece of marble, cut to the right width, length, depth, and it's polished, somewhat smooth on top, so it looks nice. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's just a beautiful piece of marble. If you had to buy it, it's $3,000. I don't know how it works, but she got it for free, so that's a big plus. I did look into concrete today without figuring in the town crew, forming it, pouring it. The creek alone is around $320 to buy yard concrete, which has come down drastically from what they started out this year. So I kind of think it's a no-win situation to go with marble. I think it's the way to go. You know, you're talking time to spend a day with the town crew down there to pour the concrete and finish it. You're going to have a fair amount of money into it, you know. With that marble, it's all done. They go over, dig a hole, set it in the hole, level it, set it, and it's done. Then they can set the seat right on it. It doesn't have to cure, it's all finished. It's sitting in the back of 1 ton if anybody wants to look at it on the shop. I think it's definitely the way to go. That's up to the board.
And the bench that they made, they carved, that's a full like rectangle, so there's nothing, you don't have to worry about balancing or anything else like that.
I don't know how it works. Supposedly it just sits on a flat surface. I didn't even, it's on a pallet down there too. That's down there.
Oh, cool, okay.
And it's not assembled.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works. I've never really seriously looked at it. They say it just sits there. But I guess the top of it's 700 pounds.
Did you want to, I have a picture of it happening.
I saw the picture
saw it,
when it was actually finished up. I haven't seen the actual physical thing.
Yeah, I haven't either. It's all wrapped up in a pallet in there. Charlie picked it up today. But I guess it's up to the board whether they, the way Lauren left it with me when I left down there at 4:30 is if you didn't want to use the marble slab, it was going to go to her house and make a base for her grill. So it's up to the select board whether they want to use it or not.
As long as it's sound, it sounds like the best way to go.
Sounds like the way to go to me.
I think it's a very attractive piece of marble.
It would be better
Very
looking
attractive.
aesthetically.
And it'll really set off the actual bench itself. And not, yeah. There's nothing like where we have to have like a rebar enforcing on like into the actual bench itself, right? Because it's just
From
gonna
what I understand, it just sits there on top of this. I was kind of wondering that myself, if it has to be drilled, you know, an anchor to it, which you can do with marble, it's no problem.
Right.
I don't know, I haven't looked at the print on it and see if it has to be anchored. Everybody tells me it just sits there. So,
I make a motion for using the marble instead of doing concrete.
I'll second that.
All in favor, we use the marble down there for the bench? Aye. We're good.
all right, I have not got to talk with Tommy or get him down here on the paving yet. He's been out of town working. He's been busy. So I'm still on hold with that, waiting for him. There was 2 other things we needed to go over. Oh, bush hog, mowing side roads.
Roadside mowing.
I presume Sandy's told you the gentleman has had health issues that does it. We hired to do it and can't do it. So now and Sandy talked today, and I called Danny Aller because he mows for the town of Timoth, Sandy inquired. And I called him and he said he's too busy. He's not going to do it. I asked him if there was anybody he knew, and he said no. So, don't know if Steve, I think Sandy said Steve was going to call him and talk to him about renting his machine.
Right.
I don't know how that would work.
I left a message too, I haven't heard back.
I don't mind doing some of the roadside mowing with my machine if I need to, but I'm not going to do all of it. I can probably put a weekend, do 140 Creek Road, do the major town stuff, like I did 3 years ago.
But the 140 just got done the other day.
Yep, that's state.
That's state, right?
Yep, 140 West would be 10, one that needs it. That, Creek
always get
Road's
confused.
bad, and there's 4 or 5 other, Hartsboro Road, Charlie went down and got some of it with it. But it is growing quite well this year. It's something that probably down the road, when things are a little better off money-wise, we want to think about doing something. If we're going to spend $7,000 to $10,000 a year to have roadside mowing done, is to have our own mower so we can have our guys do it at leisure and not have to worry about trying to hire it out. But I know that's not on the card for a while. But I'm just bringing it to the board. It's something we might want to think about down the road. There's still one other thing. One more.
Clarendon has one, do you think you could talk to Cash?
Call Cash. I think he's back to work part-time. So I can call him and talk to him on it. I think Town of Danby bought one too.
I think Lori said it's not very good.
No.
Rutland Town has a new one though.
Town Crew's got a brand new one. I just saw that the other day. But I'll call Clarendon and see what Cash has to say.
If that doesn't work, is there one that we could rent?
That's what we used to do, was rent one, and Steve ran it, or Charlie. But I'm guessing that they're probably all booked out in the summer. We normally did this, 4 or 5 months ahead, Sandy? Renting?
Yeah, we had.
Actually did it in the wintertime, didn't we?
Yeah, we had him booked for months and months.
Ahead of time.
Remind Clarendon that when they needed, their grader was down and we helped them out with ours.
Yeah. Steve did grade Haven Hill Road today. He's got the grader up on Sugar Hill. I think he's gonna do some up there if it rains a little more. So it's packs back down. But other than that, I don't think there's much else going on. They've been doing a little bit of ditch work here and there, trying to get cleaned up and stuff. But Steve just waiting for a rain so he can do a little grading.
Anything new on the salt shed, Phil?
Yeah.
Oh, there's one more thing. I looked around for these buildings, and you really need probably to go through the town email on it to get us, because you gotta give them an email and your phone number and all that stuff. The issue I have with it is probably because it's gonna be town municipal is tax exempt, and there may be a lot better deal going through that way than trying to deal with, like, just one of us called and trying to get a price on one. As far as I know, I talked to a gentleman on the one that Pittsburgh just did, and all they did was pave. They gravelled it, which the gravel was already there, they leveled it, paved a base down, and they put the waste blocks right on top of it. But they went 4 courses, which the gentleman we talked to only recommended 2 courses, if I remember right.
Thought he said 3.
Was it 3?
I think he said 3.
But I don't know if he's got, if we've done anything on the permit end, looking to see if there's an issue if we pave to set the salt on. I don't know.
I think what we were gonna talk about tonight was whether to go the route of extending the sand shed, which was the original idea, or start from scratch.
Oh, yeah, I guess I got ahead of myself. Looking into, talking to the gentleman that was down there, I don't know how much Sandy's filled you in about the permitting and the cost of doing a structure through, I think is it Vermont V-Trans? Is that who it's from?
Yep.
And comparative to if you do an add-on, they would probably might frown on adding on to that building because of being telephone poles and wood and stuff like that. But he gave a rough estimate of the cost of doing that, as much as it's gonna be to do a whole new shed for, taking that one down and replacing it with a canvas, what they call a hip structure, I think it is, hip roof structure. I don't remember the whole thing about it. Going through this grant, I think he said it was like 3 years, wasn't it, on the grant work? To get the grant work done, possible engineering study. He said you can go around the engineering study by doing some of the work ourselves, or there was a certain clause in there he used. Do you remember what it was, Bruce, on that? He said something about not having to use engineers if we did some of the stuff ourselves, and hiring it out as a structural contractor, I think it was. That was the clause.
Yeah, it seems like he said something about if we used a commercial manufactured structure, they would provide the engineering data for it. So we wouldn't have to deal with that.
Yes, I think that's what it was. He said the permits were the biggest thing to work on. Whether or not there was an issue with wetlands, and I think it was runoff with rivers and streams. What was his other main issue?
Floodplain, and then the soil density and that kind of stuff.
Because that's technically in the floodplain, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and then because didn't we adopt that with the last town plan for the setbacks for? There was something about making. Oh no, I think it was 150 feet from water sources, right, for any new buildings. Wasn't that something that got passed? I'm just trying to remember back to planning commission days.
The engineer said, depending on which way you wanted to go, if you wanted to go like all new, he said run it by our own zoning administrator, the floodplain manager, the rivers and streams, Josh Caravel, and then the wetlands folks.
Okay.
Just so that if we can get anything from, emails from each one of them early on. Then he said one thing the V-Trans folks don't like is to give you the money and then hit a snag down the road and then us have to give it back. He said then you're on the bottom of the totem pole for a long time.
Right.
So that would be some of the questions we would ask, like setbacks.
Right.
Eric would know about that.
Right.
I think what Phil was saying is he was suggesting, the engineer was suggesting, if we did expand what we have now, you should just do that with town money. He said if we tried to go for a grant with that, it would just, they would bring in inspectors and they'd look at every detail of what was there. He said if you went with the grant route, you should go new. And then he and Phil kind of figured out we would pay about the same amount if we extended it, and then if we paid 100% of extending it, or if we paid 20 or 25% of new, it would be about the same amount. So it sort of did make sense to go new.
Right, because then it's going to last
Right.
quite a bit longer, and then you're
Yeah,
not.
because if you get the grant, you're gonna match the 80% with your 20% or 25%, however it is.
Right.
So it would work out roughly the same money and you have a completely new structure
Right.
and not have to deal with that.
So then it's the process of just trying to get all those people to approve it and start that.
At least just like get that preliminary, I mean, we started some of it last fall, so we've been in touch with several of them already, so it wouldn't be like from scratch, they would know what we're talking about right off.
And if I remember right, there was no issues with wetlands or the rivers and streams.
No.
Josh.
Okay.
With wetlands either with Zapata.
Yeah, it was. We're not really changing the footage of roof area or runoff at all because of the size. It's going to be basically the same because we're deleting one shed.
Right.
And just kind of add a little more roof line to the other. And I think the one in Pittsburgh, they did use the asphalt towards the and stuff that goes into the ground, so it's not runoff.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of things that comes along with this. I think, like Sandy, roof sodding, you need to do one step at a time before we get too far. Or we do a lot of the big paperwork on it.
Yeah.
He was very helpful and eye-opening too, though, I thought. He was very helpful and
He
eye-opening.
was a nice guy, you know. He was he had a lot of information. He evidently done a bunch of that stuff.
I don't know, I almost think we're at a point where we need somebody central in all this to actually start looking for these permits and stuff. I wonder if that Mr. Wilbur up there that Kathy was gonna talk with has gotten back into the area, and if
Yeah.
he might have enough experience with the permitting stuff to maybe, centralize the whole.
Right, have one person kind of focus on that and then bring it over until the point where you have to start writing the grants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brent said he would give us a price on initial engineering and permitting and
Yeah, he
everything
hasn't
too.
given it that.
Right.
I asked him again.
Okay.
Brent from the engineering company said they would provide us with a price for doing all that stuff too. So,
I also wonder if Devin Neary from Regional, who I contacted back a few months ago, who was gonna help us with the application, he probably knows a lot of these initial steps with the permitting, because he's done them a few times.
so,
And they would help us, he said he would help for free.
That's Mr. Wilbur.
That Devin Neary from Rutland Regional, he's also the
Neary?
one that's helping on the sidewalk grant.
Yeah.
Yeah, he offered to help with the sand shed as well, that grant. They would actually administer it too, if that's what we wanted. If we got the grant, they would build in their fee to actually administer the grant as well, so maybe it'd be good to get him on board early.
Okay then. Anything else right now, Phil?
Well, I'm all set.
Okay.
I think
So it makes sense to you to head towards new rather than expand?
I would think so. Wait, from what the research you did and just,
I think it'll make a much neater, cleaner structure, and if we're gonna do part of it, we might as well do all of it. If we're gonna basically be a wash of money, I'm sure it's not gonna be a perfect wash.
right,
You'll have a new building, you'll be able to put stuff up. And I think Bruce talking about that gentleman giving us a price on the paperwork, because he's done them before, may be the way to go. He knows all the ins and outs of that.
right.
It may be good money to spend doing it that way.
Right, because if that saves us time, we're not having to go back and forth and go back and forth and go back and forth. And then pushing off when we can actually start the project and where funds go.
He's done quite a few of them, so.
Did he give an idea, Bruce, of how much he was thinking?
Not yet.
Not yet. You're still waiting on him to give you an
Yeah,
estimate?
I
Okay,
reminded him that he was gonna give us a price. Haven't heard back yet.
okay.
I thought I heard him say somewhere in $1,500 to $2,000 initially, but did anybody else hear that or not?
I heard numbers, I thought it was 25, up to 25, depending on how far into the start of the permitting process we went.
Okay. And then maybe it makes sense for waiting on, maybe kicking his butt a little bit more to try to get us an estimate, and then also looping Devin in so that we, So we have both fronts, we have the municipal part, and then we also have the permitting part. That's what I would say.
Okay, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit to the honorable mentions. We actually have quite a list of them today. First, I'd mention Gary Fredette and Bruce DeShane right here for helping the crew put in the raft over at Elfin. That's a brand new one that we just got here earlier this year. Jeff Biazuzzi for putting together a chair over in Julie's office over there. He appears to be quite handy with the tools. David and Joan Kelsey for a $100 donation to the monthly newsletter. That's the Wallingford Standard. The Strive Center down here donated some sponsorships to the Wallingford Summer Rec Program. That'll be going on over to Elfin Lake. I believe they're 1 week into that already. Jordan Jankus is doing the free movie nights here at Town Hall. I believe it's just a couple of days before we have the next one. The Wallingford Day group of volunteers who put together the Wallingford event. For those of you that may not have caught it all, last Saturday was an eventful day here in the village. We would especially thank Maria French for her contribution to that organization. And Mike Barbieri, you may have seen the Hubbardton Battlefield event that went on in the Rutland Herald. Mike played a part in getting that all set up. We thank them all. Public comments. I will mention that I think it's appropriate right now. There is a plan to put the inclusion into the town office downstairs. They're going to frame it up and everything. The select board is going to be asked to attach their signatures to it as signees of that inclusion. Unfortunately, on the day that we took the vote, Kathy was not here. She has requested, and I would sub-request with her that we allow her to be a co-signature on that document. I think we all are familiar with her view on it. She's affirmed that she would have voted for it, and I think in this case it's the right thing to do. It will be a lasting document in the town office down there, and I would appreciate if somebody would make a motion to so recommend that she be allowed to sign.
Before we make the motion, the one thing Shannon Pitlick brought up, that the wording from VCLT that actually made the inclusion statement originally, and then the towns adopted it, changed. So there was a long list of different affected parties, the possible affected parties, and they changed that all to marginalized. I was wondering if I could reach out to VCLT just to ask them why they chose that versus marginalized, just before we completely put it into, like, put it up on the wall to sign, because it says like it's a pretty big difference. And I didn't know about this until Shannon brought it up, and she said that she had looked it over and she hadn't seen it, but somebody else from another town had pointed out that it wasn't the same document that VCLT voted on.
I think that you should talk to Peg, right? Peg?
Peg Soul, yeah, I think you should too, because what they presented was what they wanted, and we agreed to. I don't think we should turn around and...
But if the intention of the document is to state that we are a municipal body that wants to include all people, then if the people that are being marginalized, how we phrased it, if their feeling is that they would rather be identified as these different subsets that VCLT imagine would have consulted with all these different groups on, if they said, oh, we want to be recognized, and these are actually we're naming these points, it might be more genuine to go with what VCLT has said, because they might have put more research into it. I would imagine if they're doing this throughout the whole state of Vermont, as much as I appreciate everybody who actually worked on it in our town, just wondering about that language.
From what I know, just from seeing the emails go back and forth.
Right.
I think, and I just know from Peg, I'm not sure how it happened, but there was several versions put out, and she was taking input and kind of an informal poll, and the one she presented to you was the one that most people provided feedback, that's the one they preferred.
Okay.
That's how it got to you,
Right.
folks. But it wasn't, so it did change versions a number of times before it got to you.
Right, right. I just think as we're all white people that are theoretically maybe not as marginalized, of just making a vast assumption and making sure that if we're going to be putting up this inclusion statement up on our wall, that we're making it so that it's what the people that are feeling that they're not being included are actually being included. So I'd like just to be able to reach out to PEG and reach out to VCLT, just to ask what their reasoning was behind it, and then PEG's reasoning, and being that she was the representative of that group, if that's okay with everybody else. And then I think definitely having Kathy sign it, if she agrees with whatever we come out in the end.
I don't know, I just feel it's a done deal and we should leave it alone. We signed and agreed what people requested from us, and
The one we voted on was presented to us. I think all of us felt that it was inclusive. We voted on that one, and what we're looking at now is having Kathy as an additional sign-on as that was. I think what you're proposing would require a complete new vote on that as presented.
Right, because it would be a different statement.
My thought is that this governing board here, I think we all had an opportunity to read through that. It personally bothers me that in this day and age, that there's still a question of everybody is welcome. Certainly my Korean wife would have agreed with this. I think that looking back to the fact that we were all in agreement with the inclusion as it was written, I would go with the one that we voted on. I can understand that the majority wishes to change the wording, but I don't think that we can just, as the four of us, vote to alter what we've already passed and approved. I have no problem if you want to go through having the lady come in and represent the whole thing and we scrap this one. I think I understand what you're saying. To me, I've dealt with virtually everybody I've ever come face to face with, and I've always felt that I treat them pretty much the same.
Right.
I've worked all over the eastern half of the country. I've driven trucks with, Lord knows, you name it, who up and down the road. At 2 o'clock in the morning at the Whitehall Diner, you're in there getting a hamburger.
Right.
I feel that Wallingford is that type of a town.
And I'm not saying that, I think I'm not saying that what we did was wrong. I think the major part of this whole process of writing these things is that some might feel that we are inclusive, and I think we are an inclusive community. It's more about listening to those people that aren't us, that don't feel included, and how they want to be represented. And I fully agree that I read that whole statement, and I thought it was acceptable. But as a white dude, I didn't know about the other part of it. That I did not know about the original language that was on VCLTs. So it's not that I'm trying to negate the goodwill that we did and the goodwill that we're putting forth by this other one. I'm just wondering, is it worth it to go back and just ask to make sure before we put this up in our town, making sure that we have the right language in the end. And if it is marginalized, then it's marginalized, but if it isn't, then making sure that we correct the mistake, or not correct the mistake, but correct what our conception is before it's set in stone. That's just my feeling about this, and I'm willing to take on that work.
It's hard for me to make a statement one way or the other because I am very fluid. I think everybody, this ought to be something that's in every single person's second nature to treat everybody fairly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I'm 73, I'm reaching the end of the road here. I wish a lot of things had gone much differently, and I wish the whole nature of the country were different right now. As I said, I'm fluid. I'll go either way as long as we get a statement that truly expresses how we feel.
Right. So then, maybe what I propose is not that we don't sign what we've already signed into, but just to double check to make sure we have it ready, and that if we decide that we do need to change the language, then putting that back up to a vote and making a new document. If we don't, then we stay with one we already have. That's what I would say, so that it's almost I'm not saying that I don't want to scrap what we already have, but just making sure that what we have is the correct one.
I just say leave it alone, but that's my opinion.
It's tough. It's really tough.
I think it'd be almost if the group that presented it came back and said that they wanted to change it.
Okay.
I think would be more, since it was them that did go through and we already.
The process of actually,
signed.
right,
So I'm going towards, I completely agree with what you're saying.
right,
So we already went through one process and it was a group that presented it to us.
true.
So I guess maybe bring it back to them. In a way,
Right.
see if this is what they want, then that's what they presented to us. As a representative of our town that created that document.
Right.
I don't mean to be smart here or an idiot. What do we finally decide? Do we go ahead with this one or do we want to review
We're
it?
all in the same.
We're the same, kind of just not exactly sure, but wanting to do the right thing, which is a dangerous position to be in.
This isn't, even if we sign it and put it, it's not like it can't be revisited down the road. So we could always go with what we have signed, have Kathy sign it, post it, and then as things change, everything changes, the group could always go
Be
back.
more of a living document almost. I would feel comfortable with going with that route, and then contacting Peg and saying, we had this discussion at the meeting. Is this something that you folks want to revisit? Or do you want to, do you feel the need to explain how you got to this point in the language decision process? And if you'd like to change it to more to VCLT or something different, then you can bring that back up and we can sign it again later. But that would still assure that we have some declaration of inclusion right now to say that we're doing, and then the work is to continue doing this.
That is one of the things that's in my mind here too. I would like to get it up
Yeah,
and have it present so our feelings are immediately known. That
yeah. I feel good with that.
And who's to say we go and change with this, that they don't change it, where you're sourcing, doesn't go ahead and change in 3 months.
Right.
We can't that's one thing, we can't always be.
Okay, I'd say
Holding
when
it
it's
off.
ready, Sandy, make sure that Kathy can sign it. Do we have any other public comments?
Thank you for that discussion.
Dave Potter. Well, going there, I'll just mention real quick, Dave is our former representative in the House.
Thanks, Dave.
I believe he served, 5 or 6 terms?
Already got one, thank you. I don't think this is appropriate to be doing that. I don't think it's appropriate for you to come in and ask to be on the agenda if you're just going to campaign.
It's up to you guys whether you want to hear me or not. I'm not pushing anything. I just offered to come in and tell you about myself and what I stand for. But I'm not here to throw anything down anybody's throat. And I haven't when I go door to door. I'll pick these up if you prefer. It's up to you as a board.
I have one on my counter.
Would you just like to hear anything I have to say or not?
In the past, I can remember we have had candidates come in, merely introducing themselves. That was my assumption that Dave, having been a past legislator, that he would just basically introduce himself and announce that he is running for the position. I don't expect a campaign speech. And certainly, as chair, I would entertain the opposition. I know Art Peterson has come in and introduced himself over the years. Offhand, I can't remember who. I mean, I've been here a while.
I don't know, in my 3 years on the board, we have not had candidates come into a meeting and proceed to campaign, and I don't think it's appropriate.
If you can keep it real brief to your history, or you're married, the type of thing.
Yeah, I didn't intend to take too long anyway. I've done it for 16 years, 2 or 3 different versions of the district. It's now with Rutland Town instead of Proctor, and Tinmouth has also dropped out of the district. I think you probably are aware of that. I've always tried to represent boards, in the various towns that I have represented. It's important that I get information from them and carry that information to Montpelier. That's the job of a state rep, and I've tried to do that. Sometimes there's conflicts between how different boards think, and then we have to figure it out. I had 10 years, mostly in the legislature, as vice chair of transportation. So I tried to stand up for transportation interests locally and in the district itself. I tried to get the share of the pie down here to our district. As you know, we're competing with other areas in the state. We did 2 bridges in Rutland City over Otter Creek That was one was by River Street, one was up by Ripley Bridge. They were $11 million. We did 3 segments of Route 7 between Brandon and Pittsford, and those were 20 to 30 million apiece. There's 3 more to go. Takes a long time. I think the most important thing, the thing that I have on my flyer, is I work with others to get things done. And this is an example of it. It's a front page picture on the Burlington Free Press, and it shows the conference committee between the House and the Senate. And we're talking about the cell phone while you're driving bill, handheld devices, the ban on them. I was the chair of the House Conference Committee for that. And in this picture, you will see Republicans shaking hands with Democrats and House members shaking hands with senators. And this is how I feel the legislature has its most productive moments, is when you can work with others to get things done. So I won't take up any more of your time. I will answer any questions, or if you have any input you'd like to have me know as a candidate, I'd be glad to entertain that.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Obviously, the Skateboard Clinic isn't here. We brought that up briefly in the last meeting. I don't know if you want to have I don't know, did you get answers, Sandy?
No.
Okay, she hasn't got anything.
The rec committee reached out to them as well and didn't get a response, and then I did and didn't get a response, so.
Okay, unless they bring it back to us, it's gone. And also the animal control officer is not here. From what I understand, some of the paperwork that I've seen indicates that he'd like further training. I don't have a problem with his looking into animal control training. As I mentioned at an earlier meeting, Joanne Barbo conducts a lot of that for the American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. I think from what I'm reading of his stuff, he's more interested in attending the police academy. The police academy does very little training in animal control. I think in the 31 years that I attended classes there, and through all of my training, I may have gotten a couple hours of animal control. What they do present there is how to be a real live police officer. And I don't think we want to put that kind of training into our animal control. To issue a citation, a court citation in Vermont, you are required to be a certified law enforcement officer. You can't just issue a citation. You can't go on the people's property. There are a lot of things you just can't do, even if we get some kind of a certificate on animal control. Rather than dragging this out for a half-hour lecture, if anybody has any questions or whatever, just get a hold of me and I'll explain to you where we are legally with this. I mean, what he's looking for without him becoming a police officer just isn't doable. We do have civil tickets. Sandy can provide them to him. They're as good as anything he can have. He can mail the people a ticket, doesn't have to go on the property, can be handled pretty much safely without endangering him or a civilian. Energy Committee appointment. Apparently the Energy Committee voted unanimously in recommendation of Anthony Fahey Thanks to Bruce, we didn't vote on this last week. I would probably entertain a motion and a second if you are in agreement with the Energy Committee's request for the appointment.
I'll make a motion to accept their recommendation.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Recreation Committee resignation. Jordan Jenkins has resigned from the Recreation Committee. Do you want to accept his resignation? And authorize myself to sign a letter of appreciation. Again, I'll go through my statement that I don't think we've ever refused anybody the privilege of resigning if they feel that they need to. Are we in agreement here? By consensus. Heating oil bids, we have, I believe, 4 of them in front of us. They do have quite a range. Suburban is $465. Champlain Valley Fuel, who I believe we're currently using, is $375.
And then
HB Energy Solutions are $579.9. And I believe
Irving was,
Suburban is $396, or Irving's $396.
yeah.
Suburban was $465. Champlain was $375. HB is $579.9, and Irving is $396. Irving does have one attachment here that town employees would get a 10-cent discount if they were to take a contract with them, and 15 cents off propane. I'll leave it to your commentary and choices.
Champlain is our current supplier, right?
Yes.
Have we had any issues with them?
I'm sorry?
I was wondering if we had any issues with Champlain.
No.
I don't see why we wouldn't go with them.
I don't recall hearing of any issues with them.
Yeah.
There's quite a range of the 4 that we have. I believe there were a couple that did not reply.
And also like with, and they also don't have any, it doesn't seem like they have any stipulations in terms of if you go over the amount. Like Irving says that if you go over the 5,500 gallons, it'll go to whatever the variable rate is at that point. Versus
I
they
hate
don't.
to say it, but I think that's pretty much a standard in the industry.
Okay.
I know I have a Irving contract, and that is one of the provisions in my mind.
I just don't see that, maybe I'm just not reading it right, but I don't see that on the Champlain.
No, I agree. I don't believe it's written in there, but I'm rather certain that that's probably the way it would go.
Okay. Oh, probably it's, if we did like 5,500, it would be at the 360, and then it would be 375. Past it, or? That's confusing. But no matter what, it's still on the better end of things.
Well, at the worst, it's about 24 cents. Is it 20? No.
20, or 19?
396, yeah, 20.
19 cents?
90 cents.
21 cents. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we use Champlain Valley Fuels to provide heating oil to the town this year.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Select board concerns. Other business, I do note that among the things listed here, there was a trespass order served. As you all know by now, that was in relation to a incident that happened at the lake. She has noted the change in the education tax rate. Steve Pitlick wrote out a check for the amount of $1,200. That closed out that account, and it helped offset the clay. If everybody's good, I think we're going to be good.
Yeah.
I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.